I just want to make sure it's okay. We're rolling. Okay,
Alrighty.
so where are you at? How are you doing? Is there anything that you really thought about, contemplated?
Well, I have been trying to really tune into what my body's telling me, trying to let it be the boss and not trying to tell it what to do, like you said.
And how's that going?
It's going very well.
What do
I just
you
have to be still and listen sometimes.
do you find that it's kind of hard to be calm and still and to be patient and to listen to it if you're feeling bad about your body? Have you had any of that?
I haven't had that yet because I feel pretty good about where I am right now.
Yeah, just kind of surrendering it all.
Yes, it's just because I know I'm not in a bad place, and I know people, like when I say, oh, I'm on a diet, people look at me and say, why are you on a diet? You look fine where you are. And it's believing them and just believing in myself.
Yeah, so do you feel like you could surrender to this? Do you feel that
I do believe I can, and I feel that I have.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I
Well,
just hope it lasts. That's what I'm afraid of. Like, well, what if it snaps back to, oh
Yeah.
God, the panic again about.
it might. So you just need to get over that. Like there might be a
Right.
moment where for some reason you're in a specific environment, you know, that it does snap back into feeling bad about your body, feeling that the body's done you harm or is keeping you from experiencing something bad. The illusion is that the body you have is keeping you from fully experiencing life. And there, for some people, it does. It is because they've gotten that large over the years, and some people have to reconcile that their body is harder to live in. I have clients who are 250, 300, 350, 400 plus pounds have to reconcile that what they've done and has created more and more damage. And so you either accept that you are an indentured slave, which is causing more and more damage, or you reconcile the losses. And in your case, you get to reconcile the loss of being the hottest in the room. You know, it's that anorexic side of pride that you have to surrender. You have to say, I'm letting this go. I'm done. I'm done trying to achieve that. It is no longer a possibility. And there is a loss in, it's called relative loss, relative deprivation, right? So the acceptance of the deprivation of the betterment of the pride on the anorexic side. Make sense? It's all relative.
Yeah.
So someone who actually has the physical detriment of the binge eating that is occurring because of the dysfunctional relationship they have with food as a consequence of the dysfunctional relationship they have with their body, right? They have to accept literal physical detriment. So it's the relative deprivation exists for everybody on the spectrum of relative to pride or relative to the body, the true physical problem. So letting go of that pride still feels like shit. It still feels like loss, right? So where people can get stuck is, at least in where you're at right now, where people can get stuck is in, okay, I'm willing to give up I'm the hottest person in the room and I am superior. I'm willing to give up the idea that I'm superior than others, or that I have reached some level of capacity that gives me personally a sense of superiority in myself. Don't necessarily need it with others, but it's within myself. Same thing. Where people get stuck is in, but I don't want to gain. So I'm willing to give up, right? But I don't want to gain. Say that again.
Right. It is a fear. Like, you want the best of both parts. You don't want to gain, but you want to feel the freedom of all this.
Yeah. So can you see where if I'm not willing to gain, you still have to monitor what you're doing. You're still based in fear. You're still actually basing your sense of life to the conditions of the body. Right? So if you have to hold on to, you can't gain weight. You can't gain weight. Isn't that the same thing people experience when they're at the ideal?
Right. Maintenance.
So what you just did when people do that is there's relief from binging. So you'll notice immediately when you no longer have the pressure to be thinner, there's no pressure to be perfect with your food. So the lenience with the food immediately reduces the impulsivity to binge. You may still be overeating. A lot of people still overeat, but there's no binging. There's a big difference between overeating and binging. So that first step of removing the superior ideal from existence is incredibly relieving. You'll feel much more peaceful. It almost feels like the cage just kind of went whoosh. So you have breathing room, you can relax. There is a sense of loss, but you're willing to take that because you now have this freedom. So it's, give and take balance. As soon as you bring in, but I can't gain weight, it's almost like you just made the cage small again. Because now it's relative to fear of gaining. So I got to keep on focusing on food. So the initial freedom people feel is very temporary. It's immediately relieving. But the moment they fear I'm going to gain, it immediately gets tight again. And what happens then is the overeating and binging can come back.
I could see it happening.
Right? Yeah, because it's you're in the midst of what's going on, and you're just feeling it out. So you can feel, that's why there might be that hesitation of this is going to go away. Well, of course it's going to go away the moment you have fear. First of all, the moment you're in a setting where you're like, for example, my daughter's getting married and I'm the mother of the bride.
Aww, congratulations.
No, not me. I'm just using that as an example.
Like,
You're sweet.
Your daughter's that old?
No, I'm not. Oh my God.
Okay, gotcha. It's an example. Gotcha.
As an example, imagine if you had a daughter and she's like getting married and all of a sudden you're the mother of the bride and there's going to be pictures in the wedding and all of a sudden you get sucked into the vortex of the wedding pictures and having to meet the magazine standard of thinness. Puke, right? Something like that. Or I'm going on a cruise.
Right.
I'm going to be in a bathing suit on the beach. So these circumstances can increase the demand you have on being thinner than you are. So even if you could say internally you're more lenient with your weight now, and you are accepting it and welcoming it because of the relief you're getting from the insanity and the darkness of the pressure to diet, right? Those circumstances can increase that pressure again. And as soon as that happens I just imagine right now, if you're going to go on a cruise and you're going to be in a bathing suit, if you're not willing to surrender to that, what would happen to your food consumption immediately?
It would increase and probably start binging again.
Yeah, don't you agree that binging would be in preparation for a significant deprivation? So it's like the feast before the famine. So you're forecasting famine. The moment the famine is in your head, I'm going to be losing weight, the feeding behavior is going to increase. Can you see too how that's not some emotional? Obviously it is emotional because it's emotionalizing deprivation. But can you see how that's absolutely human nature?
Sure.
So that's not really the issue so much as this pressure you put on yourself to be thinner for this occasion. You have to question, what is thinnerness going to really do on a cruise? What's it doing to the boat? What's it doing to anything?
Nothing.
It's doing nothing. And no one on the cruise really cares about the weight you used to be and the weight you're now. There's no relative improvement to anybody around you. No one cares. No one knows. No one really gives a shit. They're more concerned about their what they're doing than they are someone else's thinner fatness. Right? So it's all a weird illusion in your head that people who are thinner have more fun on a cruise, right? And it's bizarre because the fun of a cruise isn't necessarily coming from a thinner body. What is the thinner body really doing? Well, what it's doing for someone who believes in thin supremacy is it's giving them a sense of pride. So what people are doing is they're projecting their own sense of self-centered pride onto those who are thinner than them, and they are jealous. So it's a jealousy from the narcissism within yourself that you're projecting onto others who are thinner, who you think are more prideful and self-centered and more confident in themselves because they're thinner. Makes sense. So,
but also I find that as I look around on the cruise, I'm sitting on the cruise looking around at other people. In my head, I feel very judgmental towards the big fat guy who's stuffing his face with nachos, and so I'm guilty of it on both sides.
Well, yes, especially on the anorexic side of it. No, you would never have thought that you were anorexic, right? But you're on the anorexic side of the spectrum. But that's totally in line with someone with anorexia, to be so self-righteous that you are the one that's the asshole. You are the asshole. Isn't it suck to have to admit that? But can you see then why, if that's you and that's what you've done, why you would have such a hard time?
Right, because I believe if I'm doing it to other people, they're doing it to me.
Yeah, that's projecting your asshole narcissism onto everybody else. Just like what I said. You know, if someone's thinner than you, it goes both directions. You feel inferior. If someone's fatter than you, you feel superior. It's thin supremacy, right? And you're stigmatizing these people. So because you're aware you're doing it, you're very clearly aware that the possibility is there and does exist that someone's going to do it to you. So you would have to go in and unravel this shitty karma that you've created for yourself by recognizing that the people you've been shaming, they've done nothing wrong. The shamer has the problems. Has the lack of compassion or empathy. Right? Now imagine that you had just spent 2 months starving yourself for this cruise. And you're on a cruise, and what do you think you're going to do when you're at the buffet?
Reward myself.
Yeah, and what do you think they're doing?
Rewarding themselves.
Yeah, the lack of compassion for what you do is what, and you're not even seeing it what they're doing. You just see that they're fat and suck at it, not realizing that you're doing the same goddamn thing with the same mentality. You know, it's like, of course, if they starved themselves, and there's no compassion. Notice how there's so very little compassion for why people do what they're doing. That, you know what? For whatever reason, that to them is joy. That to them is their fun. That to them is their vacation. And if that's how they want to spend their vacation, that's what they should do. Because that's where they're at. You may not want to do that, but that's because you're aware that you don't want to feel sick to your stomach. But you know what? To someone who's a dieter, they don't even feel the sick to the stomach. They just feel the need to feed right now because they're going to go on a diet when it's over. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I've been on vacation before, looking around me, feeling so fat, like planning out my next diet the minute I get home, because I will never be on vacation feeling like this again. And it's sad that so much of my energy was wrapped up in
You're not even, yeah, it's all around your body image. You're not even experiencing the environment.
Yeah, I wasn't like in the moment. I was in the past. How did I get here, and where do I go from now?
Yeah, well, and it's self-centered. You're actually not even in you're in the self-centeredism of it all. Do you see that now?
Oh yeah.
My God, the world, that cruise ship did not revolve around me, but yet in the moment it revolved around me. Everything was about me.
Yeah. It
Me,
felt like
me,
it did.
me, bad, 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 or them bad, me, good. You're just always trying to prop yourself up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clutching onto anything to make yourself feel better about how shitty you feel about yourself, you know? So it's just survival mode. It's all about survival. That's the ego. Trying to survive. And it's meanness. Me. I'm bad, so therefore I gotta find to clutch onto what's good. It's all about you trying to prove yourself to yourself. Oh, talk about the misery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine going, same cruise, but not having your weight, your size, your shape, whether it's thinner or fatter or anything in between, is zero relevance. Zero. It's blacked out from importance. How different would that cruise feel?
Mm-hmm.
What would
Yeah, you'd be able to enjoy more of what's going on around you.
right? It would be
turning
like
it inwards.
Think of all the information and all the stuff around you that you now get to experience. It would be about the cruise. It would be about the environment, the water, the boat, the people. It would be about reading a good book and the sun and, think of all the other freedoms that happen when you're free from it being about the way you look and how people and the way other people look. Just get rid of that too. Imagine if it's not about what other people look either. Like it's none of your business and none of your prerogative, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel?
Yeah. Well, it's freeing not having to waste energy on things that really don't matter.
Oh, isn't it the best?
Yeah.
That part to me in my own recovery felt impossible. I could never have imagined having the freedom of feeling that way again. As like you're a kid, how kids, they don't see that. They don't, it's not important to them. They're so living in the present of what they're experiencing in that moment. It's all about the flower I'm looking at. It's all about this cool little bug. It's about whatever is going on. You're in the presence of just existing in your experience. And I remember at my worst, just fantasizing about what that would be like, what I would do to get back there. Like, what would I do to be free from this horrible, horrible shackles of darkness, obsessed about what I look like, what other people look like, what am I doing, what type of exercise am I doing, what type of food am I eating, what I did wrong, how am I going to fix it. When you experience that freedom, could you imagine going back into that?
No, I mean, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I will fall back into that, but
Well, why would
certainly don't want
to. Right? What would you have to care about for that to happen?
How I look.
Yeah. You'd have to care about what people think about the way you look. Too. It's not just caring about the way you look, it's caring about what other people think about it as well.
Right. Being judged by the way I look.
So let's go through that. Why don't we just let's go through it instead of having to be afraid that someone's going to judge you and will suck you back in. Why don't you go through it in your mind ahead of time? So if someone is criticizing you and thinking you're a fat pig, how do you go through that without relapsing into I am ugly, oh my God, I have to fix this? How would you stay in this peace and freedom in that environment of being judged?
I guess by telling myself that they're not important, their thoughts are Or maybe it's something they're feeling about themselves, so they're just putting it out there for everyone else.
Yeah, I think you're in the right direction. It's actually trying to understand why they would judge you.
Why is it important to them?
Yeah, and the other thing that was very important for me in that forethought around it was to recognize that if these people knew the degree of suffering and darkness I've been in, trying to be thinner and trying to maintain being thinner, they would, if they knew the truth of what that did to me, they would honor my decision to be larger. They just don't know. They just don't know the damage that was caused.
Just ignorant.
Yeah, they'd have no idea. And the sad thing for them is that because they are not aware, they're probably suffering.
Probably.
You know what I'm saying? Because I've been there. I know what it's like, what would bring them to actually position themselves that way with someone else's body. It's not like it's their body that they're criticizing. I could see if I was taking care of their body, that they would be critical of me because I'm not meeting a standard they have for their own body. But it's not their body. They're criticizing the body I'm in. So why are they forcing their opinion into my body's boundaries? Like, why is their opinion overreaching into my body? As if it is theirs and I should do what they want with my body, as if it is theirs. So why are they claiming power over my body enough to criticize it? Because don't you agree, to have a criticism like that, you have to believe that you're aware of what is best, right? So there's
so many people that think that they know what's best.
Well, so what type of person would overreach into criticizing someone else's body as if it is their own?
Hurting person.
That was you, and you've done that, and you know what it takes. So if you experience that from someone else, don't you agree the only way to be unscathed by it is to forgive it while it happens, as they do it? It's kind of like a child that's trying to hit you, and they want to hurt you, but they're so short and tiny that it does nothing. And you could see they're mad at you. You just go, oh. It's a moment you just go, oh yeah, you're upset. Okay. And it just, so imagine going through that. Imagine a situation, I don't know if you have siblings, but where you're going to hang out with your siblings and all of them are thinner than you and you're the fattest one and everybody's going to find out that you're fatter. You see these triggers? This is a common one. I have seen that one a lot. Competition within one's own family, including parents, to who's the thinnest and the most successful at being thin, and who is the most shameful embarrassment of the family in their fatterness. And what diet are you on this time, and who's the most successful on their diet, and how are they, praising their own diet and talking about it as if you should do it too with them because you're probably embarrassed and miserable about your body.
Well, that's how my childhood was. I was the one that always was forced to be on a diet.
The resentment, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My brother, I only have one brother, but he was always skinny as a kid, so they were always feeding him to try to put a little pounds on him, and no, you can't have that.
Yeah.
You already ate your one cookie today, so I'm like, but I want it. And I'm watching him being adored and put at his feet, and he doesn't want it, and I'm the one who wants it and can't have it.
Yeah, did you ever feel resentment for that?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
That feeling of resentment, do you feel like that has carried into why you eat when you do and overeat when you do?
I believe it is rooted. Yeah. And yes, I do. Yeah. And I believe it's me showing I'm the boss now. I don't have to listen to anybody telling me.
Yeah, that's self-defense. That's fighting. In survival mode, that would be someone saying, I'm fighting. I'm fighting for what I want. I'm not going to sit back and let people take what I want. So that's fighting. That's survival mode. That's a survival mode.
But who am I fighting? I haven't lived with my mother in 30
You're
30
fighting
some years.
the resentment. You're fighting the feeling like I'm being mistreated. And when it comes to food, that shit is real. I mean, you're talking about a lot of evolution backing that feeling of resentment with food. If everybody around you gets to eat and you don't, how do you think that's going to feel to anybody in that position of being withheld?
Terrible.
Yeah.
You're being isolated from the group almost.
Yes, it feels like you are being pushed down or out.
Yeah.
So it feels threatening. It feels like someone is hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you see why then the response to resentment would make a whole lot of sense in fighting in that position? Why you would be like, I'm getting my food. It's self-defense.
Right. Well, and like I said, when do you let that go and realize I don't have to fight anybody anymore? I'm fighting myself now.
Well, you have to look at totally. And that's a great question to ask. How do you let go of those resentments? Well, you have to question why you are continually depriving yourself, why you have perpetuated the deprivation willingly. You've willfully surrendered food, and you have to question, why am I doing this?
I like the visual you gave me the other day, because I keep looking at that when I'm very visual, so I keep seeing myself being in a jail cell and the door has been open all the time and all I have to do is step out.
Yes, but yes, for sure. You just have to decide. But what is it? I want you to answer the question. Why are you willfully depriving yourself? And what are you resenting? Well, you're resenting the deprivation, but when you willfully choose to do it, what are you doing it for? It's very simple.
To feel in control.
To be thin. To be thinner.
Right.
So, of course, you're trying to control your weight. You're trying to control your weight. You're trying to control food to control your weight. It's not about controlling food so much as it is about controlling your weight. This is the hardest part for people who are in this drama to express. They have a very hard time expressing it. It's so confusing because no one questions that the goal of being thinner is wrong. Nobody questions that. So there's only where the focus on eating disorder recovery ends is on food control. That's what they call it, an eating disorder. Well, if they were to tell the truth, it's actually an eating consequence. It's not a disorder. It's actual survival mode. Eating survival, if you want to call it that. That's really what it should be called. I am in eating survival mode. Why would you be in eating survival mode? What's threatening the eating survival mode? Oh, could it be your desire to be thinner?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought that's the problem? Who would have thought that this survival mode eating pattern that the good 30% of the country has right now, because the other 30% is actively depriving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought it's based on the idea that you're supposed to be thinner to prove yourself as a human being? That's how you become, that's how you prove your worth. Only thinner people are worthy. So if you're fatter, you're an unworthy piece of shit. So in order for you to not be a piece of shit, you have to deprive yourself. So can you see where the resentment comes in?
Mm-hmm.
You're kidding me? I have to deprive for what? So in the moments that everybody else gets to eat and you're not, what happens to this whole I want to be thinner and I willfully deprive? Flushes down the toilet. Yes.
Right.
All of a sudden you're like, screw this whole thin supremacy shit. It's dumb. I really want my food.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of priority, when it comes to your food is usually the priority. It's only when you can isolate yourself that your body image becomes a priority. When I can sufficiently isolate myself, or when the idea of being thinner becomes magnified, like at a wedding, like, those moments you're willing to deprive. But in the end, the mammal need to consume food and to feel equal to others with food is going to win, you know. And,
right.
you know, a lot of the people out there, if they would just admit it, have more bulimic tendencies than they'd like to admit, right? How many people binge and purge to stay the same weight? They may not be puking, and if they do puke, they don't admit it to anybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably don't even know how many people are doing that.
A lot. And if they're not doing it that way, they're doing it through diuretics, or they're trying to do it through exercise, thinking that's the healthy way to go, you know, because I'm healthy. You know, sure, I indulge, but the next day I like do an hour or two of CrossFit. I'm going to go run a marathon. I'm a marathon runner. I'm so healthy while I binge eat on my, you know, bad food items the day before. And they think that that's healthy. But they don't realize the mental aspect of that is really an indication of terrible problems. There's terrible problems underneath it all. You may have the perception of health because you're exercising and you're fit, but terrible underneath it all, they are in a toxic psychological environment. It's very passive aggressive, internal abuse.
Sounds like what I've been doing without the exercise.
It's toxic. Yeah, that's bulimia. You know, it's a tendency, bulimic tendency. You know, if you were doing that 2-3 times a week, you would have, that's exercise bulimia. A lot of people do it and they just think that's normal. That's what their trainer told them to do. So again, no one looks at the thinnerness as what they need to be. Have you ever thought to resent? And I do. There's a lot of clients that do resent the idea of having to be thinner. And they sabotage and binge to say, screw you, I don't care, I'm going to be fatter. Like they're hurting themselves to prove that they're pissed off that they have to be thinner. You know, the whole thing is victim position. I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. And maybe that victim position has to be surrendered so that you don't have to direct your whole life around proving otherwise. You know, go ahead.
I think I've been in that boat before too.
Oh,
that's
the
when
resenting
I go on the
having to be thin.
No, I'm not doing it anymore. I'll show you. I don't know who I'm showing, but.
Well, that's actually really common in this whole body love movement is people who want to prove I don't have to be thin. I resent the whole diet industry, and I've had clients who've been this way. So I'm gonna eat what the hell I want, and I'm gonna eat excessively to prove that I don't care. That's equally as, you know, you're actually doing it to prove you don't care, which is a sign you actually do care. If you didn't care, you would eliminate yourself from all of it. It doesn't, why would you do that physically to yourself to prove to someone you don't care? Who are you trying to prove it to? And if you have to prove it, what is that a sign that you actually feel underneath it all? That you care. If you have to prove you don't care, you actually care.
Yeah, you do care.
I know. That's right. The proving part of this is a sign that you care.
Right, or else you wouldn't do anything about it.
Correct. You make sense.
Neutral.
You would be like, I don't care. I don't care one way or the other. So I'm just going to perform the way I perform. Like if I don't care if I win or lose, then I would just do what I'm going to do, and it would make no difference. I wouldn't have an emotional attachment to the outcome. The outcome would be the outcome, and it doesn't have meaning or symbolism attached to it. That's the goal with your body image. If you're not proving anything anymore, if you were to go on a cruise, does it matter what you weigh? What if you are the loser? If you don't care anymore, what if you are the loser? What if you are the fattest person in the room? What if people are judging you? If you literally don't care, well, it doesn't. You're like, great. I would willfully say, yes, I'm the fat person in the room. You can all think I'm crazy, and it doesn't do anything. It's just like it has no power because there's no. You're not attached to the symbolism that someone else might be projecting onto you. In a family where everybody thinks you're fat, you go, yes. Oh my God, I'm so fat. Okay.
Yeah, You're right.
It just has no power. Similar to someone who says, oh my God, you're the bad person because you're not going to church and you should go to church and you should do this stuff. And so someone who is over it, how do they feel about someone judging them for not going to church?
It gets annoying.
Well, they don't care. They don't care. It doesn't matter. That person who is judging you, they should go to church. If they have those strong feelings, they should be free to go. Right? Do you see how it's just like, it just has no, and ultimately you end up distancing yourself from the person, i.e. it gets annoying. But it's
right,
not,
and that's how I kind of feel like, well, if you want to go, then go. If I choose not to go, that's my prerogative.
But do you see, though, in that position, you don't necessarily have to defend yourself.
Right.
So what you just said was a state of, I'm neutral about it. I'm not telling you can't go. I'm neutral about it. So if you want to tell me I'm crazy and going to hell, that's fine. It doesn't impact me. I'm not getting all riled up about it. So do you see how it doesn't impact you? Because you don't attach the symbolism of God's love or God's hate. With that type of God, why would there even be the devil? God is the devil, right? With that type of fire and brimstone, who needs the devil?
Yeah, that's for sure.
But either way, again, it's no different than with that type of mental illness, who needs thinness? Thinness is like, honestly, if thinness comes with, wouldn't you rather go into the hell of fatness if thinness came with that type of detriment? You're going to be unhealthy. Wouldn't you rather have physical unhealth than psychological insanity? Low self-worth, impulsivity, narcissism, narcissistic shaming of others, pride in yourself. I mean, which one would you rather?
Being fat.
You're going to get cancer. Okay. You laugh because you know that what we're comparing cancer to is pretty horrific. You're self-mutilating yourself by being afraid. It's like, I'm not afraid to die. That's for sure. I am the suffering part. I'm kind of over that. That to me is absolute hell. Like we're in hell. There is the possibility of hell on this earth. We're in purgatory here. And I've been at the bottom of Dante's Inferno. And I would rather get in a car accident and lose my legs. I know that sounds really gross and all, but when you compare the suffering of that type of psychological, and it's like losing the soul. Physical loss compared to a soul loss. It's like I might be a
good place to be.
Well, you can feel there is definitely a form of being spiritually disabled, soul disabled, life disabled, that is completely in the mind, total and complete psychological and emotional and spiritual disability, which makes your body useless anyways, right? Versus the physicality of what you're afraid of. Going into the physicality of gaining weight. Go in there. Go into it. Why wait for yourself to be triggered into it? Why don't we just go into what you're afraid of? What are you going to do if by never dieting again and eating gracefully with the food that is bad for you, right? And good for you, all of it. There is no good and bad anymore. So all food is available for permanently forever. No dieting, right? If you gain 20 pounds, that's another size up. You become the fattest one in the room. Because that's what the body is naturally, eating quote unquote normal. Is that worth going back into emotional and spiritual disability?
No.
It's actually like being blind at life. You're blind to life. You can't experience life. You're going blind spiritually. Spiritual blindness. Because your whole entire mind is fixated on the food, the exercise, right? Do you see how that creates blindness to life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't see anything else.
You can't. So you're blind. So you're disabled to life, right? So is that worth going into blindness?
No.
So and go into that though. What if you do? What if you say I can't handle 50 pounds? Let's go 50 pounds. I can't handle that. 50 pounds physically would put me into a state of like self-loathing. Let's just go into the sin supremacy shaming of it. Is the physicality of being 50 pounds heavier worth living in that spiritual and psychological disability and blindness to life? If you were 50 pounds heavier but had visibility of life, openness to life, right? The open-mindedness around allowing life to open itself to you and come to you in an open-minded way, right? Where you're experiencing it all. You're heavier, 50 pounds heavier and bigger, but you have access to complete and total openness to life. Vision.
I just don't think I would be open to life if I was 50 pounds heavier. I think it would just throw me right back into that.
Well, yeah, that's why we're talking about. That's why I'm bringing this up. So you could go, well, let's compare it. If you go into the narcissism, the shame that you feel would limit you, right? Because that's what you're saying. I would go with. So you're basically saying if I was that bigger, I'd become emotionally
disabled again.
Disabled. Why? Right? Because actually go into a body that big. Let's do that. Let's experience a body that big. You would be 200 some pounds?
Mm-hmm.
What, 225?
250.
250. So go into 250. If that's what you were going to be and you had to be, what would happen?
I just hate myself again.
Well, okay, that's assuming you can change it, right?
Assuming I can change it, meaning thinking I could lose weight again?
Yeah, because the only reason why you'd hate yourself is to change it.
Right, because I wouldn't want to be there.
Yeah, so that's only happens with the illusion of I'm going to change this. I could change it, I'm going to change it. So go into it now as if it's permanent. There's no possibility of it. It's permanent. Permanent physicality. Notice the difference?
Just still wouldn't like it, I don't think.
That means you're still trying to get out of the permanence of it. So go back into the permanence. Don't let yourself escape permanence. Open your mind and your eyes to permanently being 250 pounds, as if it is a permanent physical disability. Breathe it into your lungs permanently. It's not going to change. There's no hope for change. It's permanent. Why would you go into permanent emotional disability too? Because that's a choice.
It's true.
You can feel that, right? Why would you?
Double indemnity.
Yeah. That would be terrible, right? To emotionally go into hell by choice, because it's a choice, right? Because the moment you accept it as permanent, what happens?
Then you'd be okay with it.
Yeah, you go back into the spiritual awareness, right? Enlightenment. You go back up into that space of awareness and enlightenment. And it feels good and beautiful because life is good and beautiful, right? It's like the sunshine is the sunshine, whether you're 250 pounds or 200 pounds. It's still beautiful sunshine. Nothing changes around you. So you still have access, no matter what the physicality of the body, to this incredible world, this open space of life around you. What does 250 pounds do to change any of that?
Nothing.
I know, right? So do you see how the illusion is that your body makes or breaks the freedom? That's an illusion. Because if you got in a car accident and became a paraplegic, I use that example all the time. In fact, with every client I work with. You would adapt. You'd have to adapt physically. You'd have to adapt your expectations. You'd have to go. There's an acceptance process. But ultimately, does losing your legs change the sunshine? Does it change the beauty of flowers? Does it change your access to life coming to you in other forms?
No.
And nothing really changes.
Might even appreciate it more.
Well, that's if you don't become a victim and start feeling sorry for yourself and go back into psychological disability. Right? Do you see how that's a choice? That's a choice. That's like saying my life is only good if physically it's good. Well, hold on a second. What do you expect from the body? Like, what is life about? Is it about your body? Physical change is inevitable. So why are we sitting here thinking that I have to have a static, easy body to be open to reality? When the more open you are to reality, the more, you're out in nature and you're more likely to get injured, Really think about the physicality of the body and what is life really about? And what do you need from the body to get that life?
Well, I guess from the body, you just need to be able to have it carry you through this life.
Yeah, like consciousness, right? It's got to be able to just keep you conscious and aware. If you're aware, even if you're, Stephen Hawking's, the smartest man on the planet. Do you know who that is? What physically is his body really doing for him? It's not breathing for him. It's not eating for him. It's not moving for him.
He's in a shell.
He's conscious. And do you think that he's open to life? Or is he psychologically disabled?
No, I think
he could be disabled. He could feel sorry for himself. But that's a lot of energy, don't you think? And closed-mindedness. And all of a sudden the lights go off and you're in the dark. Right? You're blind now. Blind now to what's available to you. The moment you go into that space, you're blind. You just created emotional blindness, spiritual blindness. You are in the dark. And all you're focusing on is how shitty your life is. So how can you be open to all of the benefits of just being conscious in that? Right? So the fact that he is as intelligent as he is, and he is as successful in terms of what he's living for, is a sign that he is not psychologically blind. He's spiritually not blind in any way. Right? So, if you just have to find the route to that vision of life, right? So physically, do I have to walk to be able to enjoy life that's around me?
No.
You see how reversed this is from what you've been in, which is you can only have access to that freedom when you're thin and perfect and you feel good about your body. Once you feel good about your body relative to what other people think is good about your body, then you might feel better about the life and have the freedom and confidence to live again. That's an illusion. That when I'm thinner, because if you're using that physical condition to think that you're going to be free, it's like saying when I'm thinner and when I diet enough, my mind will be open to living life and my spiritual eyesight will widen. But if you're looking at something so tiny as body image, that's all you get to see through. You don't really get to see anything else. So inherently, that tininess of thinking about life through that tiny little speck of thinking, how are you going to think bigger from that little speck of body image perfection? I can only live in a body that's perfect? So when are you ever going to have the open mind?
Never, as long as you continue to think that way.
Correct. So what if the whole point of getting out of this lower level of survival, what if the way to do it is by removing the conditions that you've been brainwashed, right? From the culture that says you can't enjoy your life until you're rich, until you have the right house, until your kids are perfect, until you are perfectly healthy, until you're thin enough, until you have the right color skin, until your eyelashes are larger, bigger, blacker, until your butt's bigger but your waist is smaller. You have to have all the Gucci shit. You got to be the right car. You're not in the right neighborhood. You have to go to the right church. You have to have everything. You have to get a better degree. You have to learn something better. You have to have everything you need. You can't open yourself to reality until all of this stuff is accomplished. Right? Doesn't that sound like slavery?
Mm-hmm. Sounds ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous because the reality is it's a state of mind. It's not a state of gaining objects or actually doingness. You have to do this and do that and do this first. Well, hold on a second. Why can't I just sit on my front porch and enjoy the beauty of what's on my front porch? If I don't have a front porch, why can't I just enjoy the tent that I'm living in? Why can't I just... I'm conscious. Why can't I just enjoy the fact that my fingers work? Doesn't that sound like being a kid again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, in being present, you can either take the life you have and loathe it because you think it should be better than it actually is. Or you can take the life you have. You can fear what you're afraid it isn't or it's going to be, which puts you in total survival mode, right? Or you can just accept it. And then from there, you get to be creative. Once you accept it, now you're like, what are you going to do with it? What can you do? Now you become the creator versus the always trying to just keep your head above water. So why is 50 pounds going to be detrimental to the point where you're willing to go into, emotional blindness, darkness?
Guess it's not.
Well, you have to feel that out. You need to really think about that. What is that going to do? And what is so beneficial of 50 pounds less? That being emotionally and psychologically blind and disabled, worth it? What's it worth? What is worth that disability?
Nothing.
What's worth freedom from the disability?
Being 50 pounds heavier.
Right? Isn't that the truth? You went right to it. I'd rather be 50 pounds heavier. I went to the point of 500 pounds where I'd rather be completely and totally physically disabled. Physical disability to me is something I can handle. I can get around that as long as I'm conscious, as long as I'm open and I have my awareness and thinkingness, and I can explore my life emotionally and spiritually in different modalities and different environments. I can handle that. Because if I have to have the perfect body, that means I have to work on the perfect body. That becomes my life. And I have nothing. I have nothing else. I don't really get any freedom. So yeah, you're physically better. You're physically, mobile. You're, capable of sweating and working out, but you're comatose. You have nothing. That's all you have. Because that's what you think you need. That's all you have. I'd rather not have it anymore. I surrendered that in the process of committing suicide. That's how I ended up staying alive, right? So I realized I would rather in the process of getting ready to commit suicide, I had decided I'd rather die than to continue to do what I'm doing to be thin. And in the process of contemplating death, as it felt so good, committing suicide felt so relieving. I opened my mind to question why I would do it, and it really opened my mind to think I'm doing this because I refuse to be fat. It was a moment of a consciousness for me, a moment of like, what the hell? I'm doing this? I'm willing to commit suicide because I am so burdened by what I'm doing, what I have to do to be thin. It never connected to me until I had already gone through the reconciliation processes as I was preparing to commit suicide, that I was doing this because I was so afraid to be fat, so deathly afraid. And I remember thinking, well, if I'm afraid to be fat, but I'm not afraid to commit suicide, my fear of gaining fat is no different than committing suicide. It's death, either direction. So if I'm willing to die to get rid of this psychological, blindness, and the fact that I have nothing and am nothing, but everything I have to do to stay thin, if I stop what I'm doing, which is what I'm committing suicide for, and I allow the body to be fat, isn't that the same thing as suicide? But I stay alive and I'm free. What would life be like? That's like reincarnating. That'd be like starting my life over, because I don't know who I am if I'm overweight. I don't know who I am anymore if I'm a fat person. I don't know if I can handle that. But I can handle putting a gun to my head. So the willingness for me to experience life from the other side brought me all of this consciousness, brought me this awareness that I'm bringing to you. It's like, look at this from the other side. It's so amazing on the other side. It's so free. The body is such a tiny part. It's a huge part in that it's giving you the gift of life and consciousness. You've done nothing. You do nothing, really. It puts you to sleep. It makes you hungry. We're just fortunate to be in an environment that's easy. Food is right there. Shelter's right here. We have the luxury of having shit like this that's not necessary, shit like decorations. We're going to sit here and loathe our life because I have body fat. That's actually meant to be there to keep you alive in famine and cataclysm. So it's a choice to be blind psychologically when it comes to thin supremacy. It's a choice. All because you're afraid to be judged. Well, which one's worse? The experience of being judged or total psychological comatose and blindness?
The blindness is worse.
Oh, it's so bad. It was for me. For some, and it wasn't so bad all the time. There was a value to it, right? But it just got bad for me to where it was worthy of suicide. When you hear about the suicide rates in eating disorders, to me, it's like, oh yeah, it's really, honestly, it's worth it. It's worth killing yourself. As sad as that sounds, it's that bad. It was for me.
I've been there too.
So you just got to look at if the body is bigger, just go into the physicality of that. If you have to be the one in the room that's seen as a failure, which one's worse?
Being seen as a failure for being stuck in the thin supremacy.
That's worse than the blindness, the psychological blindness proving that you're not worse? Which one's worse? What you have to do to prove that you're not bad? Or the act of just allowing yourself to be judged that, but then free? Because if you're okay being judged that and you accept that, you're free, right?
Right. So that's worse, is not being free.
Yeah, having to prove yourself otherwise is just terrible. It's terrible. That's like having to prove yourself to a narcissistic asshole. You'll never win. Ever. You'll never win. The whole point of narcissism is to be superior. So everything other than that is inferior. It's a game of constant failure. To prove some system correct? Prove it to me. Give me your money. Prove to me that you can be happy thinner. You're going to be thinner. You can. Oh, I don't think you can do it. Give me your money. I'll sell you the diet. Prove it to me. You know, you're just always being pushed under by this system. Oh, now that you're thinner, you have to have, your stomach needs to be flattened. We have to go in and liposuction the sides. Now you need to get your skin removed. Now you need to get the precious, perfect little nails. Now you need to change your whole clothing attire. Now you need to get your hair done differently. Now we're going to do a whole makeover. The magnifying glass for people who actually become thinner, it just magnifies. You just now have stricter standards now. Have you ever lost weight and realized and recognized that as you lose weight, it's like they put you under a magnifying glass. So now all of the little things become magnified into bad things. So you'll never, ever escape body image. You are never going to escape.
Just keeps building up more and more instead of getting better.
No, and after a while, the resentment builds up, doesn't it? And the binging is inevitable. It's inevitable. Anyways. All right. So those are some things you need to think about, is the possibility that if you really surrender this whole thing, your body's going to be what it's going to be naturally. You're not binging anymore. That goes away. You know, the eating to hunger is more natural. You may or may not lose weight. Do you even want to know if you lose weight? Do you really want to track that too?
No, I haven't even stepped on the scale at all.
It doesn't matter. You've got to get to where it just doesn't matter. If it matters, I have to focus on it. If it doesn't matter to me in any direction, you're free for good. So that's where you need to continue to go in your mind. The food stuff will be easier and easier as you do that. It becomes very natural. So
that's what I want. I just want it to be natural, not first forethought in my mind every day.
Okay. Awesome. All right, let's schedule our next session.